Welcome to an impromptu special edition of the Orlando Soccer Show on Wednesday, March 11th. Orlando City and head coach Oscar Pareja have mutually parted ways after a disappointing 0-3 start to the season, capped off with a 5-0 loss to New York City FC. I'm your host, Kyle Foley, along with Brent Peckus and Gavin Eubank. We're here to discuss our thoughts on the timing of this move, whether this move was the correct move to make or the timing was correct anyway, and where Orlando City goes from here. So, Gavin, I'll start off with you. Was this the right call?
Was it the right call? I think yes. Was it the right time? No. That time would have been either you continue to ride this out and get better. Otherwise, you're admitting now that you just spent an entire offseason building a roster for a head coach that you didn't think was equipped to do it. But, I mean, we talked about it on the show last week. This team has been struggling for a while now. And these 3 games have not been good, but Orlando City going back to all the way into last summer. 1 win in their last, 16, 17 games, something like that. I mean, the team has not improved over the last couple of years, really. I mean, so 6 seasons in charge, Orlando has made the playoffs every year under Oscar Pareja. They've made MLS's back final, if that's something you care about. They obviously won the Open Cup. They made it to an Eastern Conference final a couple of years ago, but Orlando hasn't taken that next step. Orlando has gotten to a point under Oscar Pareja, and to be clear, I mean, this team is probably in a place they would not have been otherwise because of him, and he has elevated the club to a degree that they certainly could have only hoped for when he signed on 6 years ago. But they hadn't gotten to that next level, and I do think that we've reached the point where now is the time to bring in someone else to get that fresh face, get that fresh message and mentality, and see what you can do to jumpstart and move forward from here.
Yeah, I was like, I'll chime in. Matt Doyle, his stat, 1-9-3 since the League Cup quarters, a -18 goal differential. Well, and that was when he started. It was 17 when he started the Blue Sky Post. It grew. It is the right time. I think the only right time is what Kyle said. Like at the beginning of the season, you just put the marker down that it's going to be a revitalized new change. But you're only 3 games into the season. You maybe have to deal with 2-3 more games with a caretaker, and then you bring in a new manager. There's an opportunity here to still make a playoff run because in MLS, it's easy to make. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's relatively easier to make the playoffs because so many teams get in. And I think that's where we're at.
I want to talk about, though, we keep saying the right time. And I was thinking about this earlier. We talked about this a little bit on the episode 2 of maybe they do this in the World Cup break. It just seems so bizarre to allow him to, if you're going to make the move this early after 3 games, do it in the offseason like we said, but also even this week to let him take training and do media availability. And then all of a sudden on Wednesday, you've made this decision, whether it was mutual, whether it was the club just deciding to fire him, whatever. Like something about the timing this week, though, just feels off, right?
No, for sure. I mean, I think because that's what's so crazy is he goes out there and he talks to the media on Wednesday, and he's clearly, there is nothing, I mean, one, if he was going to be the head coach, like, he wouldn't be out there, and he's still prepping for the Montreal game. But I mean, if you're going to do this move, you're committed to it. It's like, do it immediately after the game. Here we are 2 days out now from their next home match, and they're they're going through all of this. But I mean, this quote from Ricardo Moreira, general manager and sporting director, where he says, "We believe this is the right moment to take the club in a new direction." I cannot imagine being able to say that with a straight face 3 games into the start of a new season, because you are now admitting that you have built a club that is not prepared. I don't understand. Because if you're saying that this is the right time, why was 2 months ago not the right time? Why was the end of last season not the right time? It is just such a bald-faced lie to come out and say that. And I don't really get worked up about these things, but it's just so silly to go on record like that 3 games into the season and try to make it just seem like we didn't mess up. It's just the door's closed. That's how life works, you know? Like, this all feels like it could have been avoided if it truly was the right time to have done that a while ago.
Are we
Yeah, if
are
you're
we
gonna-
tin
if you-
are we tin foiling this? Are we gonna like put our hats? Do you think Ricardo just wanted him out and have his own stamp on who his manager was gonna be? Like, is that it? Do you think, or I think this is more likely to happen. The Wolves, they had a meeting and they simply asked Oscar, "How are you feeling? Do you still have the fire that you had when you first came onto this club?" And I think Oscar looked him in the eye and said, "Hey, I don't. I've done this for so. I think there's a little bit of a burnout phase here, right? But I don't know. It is weird that it happened midweek. I agree with Gavin.
The other thing is with all of this, how much of this is we talked about the way Ricardo built the team in the offseason. And I was thinking there's really only 2 ways, because I think he right now is now on the hot seat where he has to prove by the end of the season that he is the right guy to be guiding the club forward. And in that, I wonder if these moves in the offseason, because as much as I might think building a club around youth is the correct way to build a club long term, it's not the way Oscar Pareja liked his teams. It's not the way he operated as a coach. So is some of this, was this either Ricardo Moreira being really smart about, listen, I want to build it this way, and I can't just fire the coach and make this stamp. I have to kind of ease into it. So I'm going to build the way I want. And either he somehow changes his ways and it works out, or he falls flat on his face, and as soon as I'm able, we rip the cord. It's either that, or he's just a genuinely incompetent general manager and not qualified for the job. You would like to think, given the hiring records both for Orlando City and the Orlando Pride, that the Wilfs wouldn't be bringing in someone who just is laughably bad at the job. So I wonder if there is not necessarily a conspiracy, but more of a just, he had a feeling this might not work out short term, but he stuck to his guns, and now let's see what happens next.
Yeah, I kind of go back to the conversation we had on the main episode this past week, where it's the Wilfs come in and they inherited this brain trust that at the time was leading Orlando City in a very successful path with Muzi, Moreira, and then Oscar. And so, yeah, I do wonder how much of that trust was there in terms of, like, maybe, let's say, hypothetically, let's say Ricardo he went to the Wilfs and said, I want to make a change. But in their minds, this guy has only brought us success. He's made the playoffs every year since we've owned the team. He's won us trophies. He's gotten us to finals. Like, if you're the owner and you can say, like, the people that were here when I took over, they've done nothing but good things for me, I feel like I should continue to trust that. I mean, and even when you go back and look at the extension that he signed within the last year, the comments in there, I mean, they all speak so glowingly, Mark Wolf does specifically, about Oscar and his impact on the club and what he means to Orlando and this team and everything, that it does seem like maybe they were pretty hesitant up to this point to do it because there had been so much goodwill prior that just making the change for the sake of making the change was something that they probably didn't want to do. I mean, that's completely, on an outside looking in, but it just kind of feels like seeing those things that maybe this was not necessarily a move they wanted to make, but it almost is like maybe like their hand was kind of forced here.
Yeah, that feels like maybe the most likely scenario in this. And look, short term, this all might work out for Orlando. Martin Perlman, who takes over as the interim head coach, was formerly the coach of OCB. So you have a guy who's been a head coach in the organization. The current, or I guess now former head coach of OCB now moves up as the assistant coach. So you have guys who are, Ricardo built the team around youth in the offseason. Now you have guys who cut their teeth coaching the youth. So there is almost a sense of like, hey, we've made these moves. We're going through all this. Now we're going to see if these guys can do it, and then kind of go from there in the summer. But yeah, it does almost feel like the Wilfs, that their hands were kind of forced in this, only because, like we talked about in the main episode, they don't have a tendency to just blanketly fire coaches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and this is going to be their first opportunity hiring a coach for Orlando City, so it's very interesting to see what happens from here.
Now, I guess with that, the question is, we'll talk about it a little bit because obviously I think it's a little too early to entirely speculate about it. But okay, so you've made this move. Who do you get? Who comes in? Who is even? And we're talking realistic options, right? Jurgen Klopp's not coming to Orlando City. Jose Mourinho's not coming to Orlando City. Carlo Ancelotti's not coming to Orlando City. I'm trying to think of what other bizarre. And Mauricio Pochettino's not coming to Orlando City. Ruben Amorim's available, not coming to Orlando City.
Pep Guardiola's leaving City soon.
That's true. In terms of realistic options, are there any names that maybe come to mind as like, I think this maybe not? I think they're gonna make this move because it's too early to tell. But hey, this might be a name worth checking out.
Yeah. Well, everyone's gonna say Wilfred Nancy, right? That's gonna be the odds-on pick. I just want to temper expectations. I just don't think he takes this job. I don't think I know there a lot of people will argue with me that it's the right fit for him. I don't know. It's just a gut feeling. He'd be the guy. He's the first phone call you'd call, right? Guy went over to Celtic?
Yeah.
Celtic, or was it? Yeah, Celtic, right? Yeah, and had a 1-month stint and was exited out. So there's that. I think Rob Valentino is an interesting one, coach of the U.S. 20 national team and former Orlando City legend, right? Who is developing the U20 national team. I think that's an interesting hire from a club standpoint. And I have no sources, no nothing. I think this is all just names that would come to the top of my head. But I think everyone's going to want Nancy, and I think and people are going to be disappointed. And then the pitchforks will already be out on the next manager because we didn't get Nancy, and everyone's going to say, well, we didn't. They'll go after Wilf and the whole we don't spend money BS because it'll be about money. And it could simply be Nancy's going to wait for the right job for him, and maybe he doesn't feel like this is the right position or the job. I don't know what you guys are thinking, but that's just my overall thought.
I'm glad you brought up Rob Valentino because I was actually thinking about it as almost a bit, because the last time Orlando fired their coach, what did they do? They pivoted to a club legend to come in, and Valentino was fairly successful in his short time with Atlanta United. That wouldn't be the worst hire if that was the decision they decided to go. I don't think it would be. I mean, I know you would hate it. And he's not. He's definitely not an option. He seems to, for personal reasons, he wants to stay home and not coach away from wherever he lives. But I mean, I would be glad with a Jim Curtin, when we talked about last week.
No.
You have that identity and you hammer it in, and especially a guy who was able to accomplish so much with Philadelphia, on I guess a similar-ish, if anything, probably way less of a budget than he would have with Orlando City. But I think he'll probably end up as in the running for the next national team coach after Podge leaves. But I do think that someone well-respected with MLS is certainly where I would want to go. But we'll see what happens if Moreira has something different in mind.
I thought you were going to commit to the bit and say Caleb Porter, which I also would not be happy about. I think Caleb Porter and Jim Curtin, both fine coaches, but MLS 2.0 when we're in 3.0. I
can't imagine the Wolves are stupid enough to get grifted by him to give him another opportunity in this league.
Just saying.
What's Jason Kreis up to these days?
Oh, jeez.
That's another good question.
I've got a maybe under the radar potential pick in Orlando City B head coach Manuel Goldberg, who's actually, I guess, again, now the assistant coach.
Oh, he's the president of soccer operations for Real Salt Lake, by the way, in case you're wondering.
That is good to know. I think Goldberg is while not a likely pick, I think that's a name to kind of keep in mind if they're willing to kind of take a risk on a young guy. OCB games have been chaos since the inception of OCB, so judging purely based on results is maybe not the best. But if your desire is to go a more youth-focused approach and bring up these guys from the B team and from the academy, who better than someone who knows that? And you're going to get to see a little bit of how this coaching team works over, at the very least, I would assume at least until the World Cup break. I'd be shocked if there's a full-time replacement before then. I think they're going to do their due diligence, but I think that is kind of an under-the-radar. While I don't think it's likely, it is a potential option. I would agree with Brent. Jim Curtin, I think, is an MLS 2.0 hire. It's not really what you want. Wilfred Nancy's unrealistic. It's going to be interesting. And a part of me hopes maybe there is a sleeper pick that none of us are thinking about, that someone comes out of nowhere and really impresses them. But they're definitely going to take the time. And like I said earlier, if Ricardo Moreira doesn't get this right, it arguably should be his job on the line. Whether it is or not is a different story, but it should be.
I mean, the better question is what kind of manager, regardless of name, with the way that they build this team, like this is the team with a lot of young, especially a lot of international players. Do you favor that? Do you favor the fact that it's just young players in general, or do you want someone who's experienced with just building a winning roster? Like, there's so many different ways that you can go with it. I mean, what kind of coach would you prefer to see, just stylistically? I mean, even like stylistically, an offensive mind, a defensive, like, there's so many different ways you can go there.
You need to be attack focused in Major League Soccer these days. I mean, I guess you can be a defensive first team, sit back and absorb pressure and try to be defensively sound. But as we've seen with Orlando City, that doesn't always work out. So I think you have to have somebody who's more creative tactically, who's able to get the most out of his players. Orlando has a lot of attacking talent. There are plenty of options out there, plenty of options on the roster that are capable of doing good things in the attack. You just have to make the most of them. You have to figure out a way to utilize them. And you look at Orlando getting knocked out the last couple of years. Why did they get knocked out? Well, it was an inability to score when it mattered most. So I would say you go for a more attacking focused, and I am of the mind that you go for a younger guy. I think if you're going for a rebuild with younger players, you also maybe go for a younger, more unproven coach and give them a chance. You want someone with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. You don't want to retread. You don't want someone that's kind of operating on stale ideas or on a philosophy that maybe didn't work out somewhere else. But we also have to see how the team responds, and we'll talk about it a little more in our preview episode for the game against Montreal. But how does this team play over the next couple weeks? If this team just continues to be stagnant, then it's hard to really wrap your mind around what kind of coach actually makes a difference. But if this team can show fight, if these young players can continue to show growth, then it is a really appealing prospect of a team for a young, hungry, creative coach to come in and take the reins.
Yeah, it's about how they respond. It'll be interesting. Gavin, I think you let it off with it. Are they going to come out and just, are they going to come out and just win 3-0 like they do with almost every caretaker manager, right? Like, do they just come out and just say, hey, you shouldn't have got rid of this guy. It was on us. I'm interested to see.
No, that's a good point.
Any other thoughts on the move? Any other? It's gonna be interesting.
My thought about managers losing jobs are like, it's not truly a manager's fault. The players play the game.
Mm-hmm.
The managers get blamed for it, and the referees ruined it. It's a famous Eric Wynalda quote, like, referees ruin games, coaches get fired for it, and players they kind of get the free pass. I think there's going to be some players who will own up to the fact that they haven't been playing at their level. And Oscar has given us many great years. He arguably is the best Orlando City coach to, helm the team, brought us our first major silverware in the MLS era. I think there's a lot to thank him for. I know that the last few games didn't go well. It's kind of nice, though, from a standpoint of we don't have to see this drag on this season. His reputation and will live on based on those good moments, rather than look like a disastrous year.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to comment on too, is just his legacy with the club. He's, I would say, by far the best manager Orlando City has had in its history. I think if you want to consider Adrian Heath for the USL years, that's fine. My long-held position has been that the USL club and the MLS club are different entities. They are different clubs. It's a different experience. So I am only looking at Adrian Heath as an MLS manager, and obviously the Jason Christ, James O'Connor years were abysmal. Oscar is by far the most successful coach, and arguably the most successful sports coach in professional sports history here in the city of Orlando. Brought a trophy here, has had a lot of success, established a winning culture for the club. Now the expectation is this club fights for championships and that making the playoffs is the bare minimum. So he deserved to go out on a better note. I think it definitely didn't deserve to be a really disappointing opening to the season and getting hands or mutually parting ways or whatever. It's a really sad way to see it end, even if we all agree it's the right move. The timing's not great, and it's a bummer, and he deserves to be remembered for the good that he did.
First of all, that's a little bit of some hardcore Stan Van Gundy slander right there to say that he's outright, or even Scott Frost. I mean, you just put down a lot of people that have coached in Orlando that have had some success
Yeah.
over the years.
It's just it's just tough. Like, right, you don't have your captain. They just re-signed him. They have the third DP spot still available, so it's almost like he didn't have the resources. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's the right time. I think the ceiling is we've hit the ceiling with him. It's on to the next person. Kyle, I think he summed it up well. It's about the legacy.
Absolutely. I mean, he's going to go down as a club legend. I mean, for all the reasons that we've said here, the trophies, the playoff appearances. I do think that, like I said, they hit that ceiling with him. I think the ideal time would have been to let him bow out gracefully at the end of last season, give him his flowers, and be able to be, everyone be able to hold their heads up high and said, this was good for a while, but it's time for the club to truly take its next step into the next era. Doing it at this point in the season in this way is very unfortunate, but even better, like Brent said, to not have to go out even more shamefully off of Jason Christ losing 6 games in a row, or James O'Connor going through just an abysmal month, summer months where the team was looking terrible. And then that question, because even if they won this weekend, I mean, we certainly know it well enough, that question would have been hanging over him for weeks, if not months, through the end of the season, or however long he lasted. So now that can get put to bed. That doesn't have to sit over Orlando City. It doesn't have to sit over Oscar, and he can take some time off, do whatever's best for him. But, now is certainly a time where eventually I would like to think that maybe at some point he'll get his flowers from the club, but probably not. That's the way sports work. Everyone moves on, and the next man up will take the helm. But yeah, no, I mean, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. He's generally a very good guy, very good coach, probably one of the most talented, well-respected coaches to ever, not just in Orlando, but in all of Major League Soccer, throughout Major League Soccer history. And he's certainly a guy that has made his impact on the club, and it will be known and felt for a long time.
All right, we will wrap it up there. Thank you guys for joining me kind of last minute to do this, and we will see you all in the next couple of days with our previews for both the Orlando City against Club de Foot Montreal game, as well as the Orlando Pride season preview. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.